Hey everybody, we're going to begin. Thank you for coming. And I'm Simon Rosenberg from NDN. And what I will say is that what we're going to do today is we're going to have a conversation about immigration and about its prospects for passage, immigration reforms passage this year or perhaps early next year. When we do these events, for those of you in the room, there's also a live webcast. And when we get to the Q&A part, those of you who are watching can submit questions online by following the directions on the screen. And we're going to try to intermix the questions from online with those in the room. And there will be a lot of opportunity for discussion today. And obviously, this is an issue that elicits great passion. So we wanted to make sure that we had time for conversation. And before I introduce our two guests today, what I want to do is establish, if we can put the slides up on the screen. Guys, just hit it. Hold on.
Can I move out of the way?
No, you're good. What I want to establish, first of all, so we don't have to get into this during the discussion, is that it's our belief that there is broad-based, bipartisan public support for what we have called comprehensive immigration reform. You're going to hear a lot of discussion about this, and you're going to hear about the Americans who are scared of how the country is changing, and during the debate in the fall. But I think that the data that I'm about to show, which I want to just begin to sort of set the tone for the day, is deeply consistent with virtually every poll taken on this going back to the fall of 2005, which is that somewhere between 55 and 70% of America wants some version of comprehensive immigration reform, and that Americans also view this as a top 4 or 5 issue. This is not a peripheral issue for the United States. The American people don't see this as an afterthought. They see this as something government should do. They want the broken immigration system fixed. And there is broad bipartisan consensus that this thing that we have now labeled comprehensive immigration reform, rather than being what some have labeled a third rail, right, is actually a common sense, middle-of-the-road solution that can fix a vexing national problem. And in this poll that I'm referring to, which is recent data, this is in the spring of this year, a poll conducted by Pete Brodnitz, who is not a fringe pollster. In fact, he was named by the American Association of Political Consultants as the pollster of the year in 2006, and his partner is Barack Obama's pollster, right, in the Benison Strategy Group. When he then asked in this poll, this national poll, and got into drilling down and describing what comprehensive immigration reform meant, let me read this to you, and then let's look at what happens to the reaction of this same group, right? So one version of immigration reform that people have discussed would take a comprehensive approach. It would secure the border, crack down on employers who hire illegal immigrants, require illegal immigrants to register for legal immigration status, pay back taxes, learn English in order to be eligible for U.S. citizenship, right? Pretty much describes, I think, in a fair way what we've all been working towards on comprehensive. And look what happens with support when you actually detail what we're talking about. It goes up to 86% national support. Right? So going backwards, when you just use the term comprehensive immigration reform without detailing what that means, over 60% support in the country, right? Obviously, more support than there are for many of the other issues that are being discussed in Congress right now. But when you detail it and explain what comprehensive immigration reform means, it goes up to 86%. And remember that before we go on, this is a bill, unlike health care and climate change or many of the other things that are being discussed, that has a history of bipartisan support in Congress. This passed, the Comprehensive Immigration Reform Bill, the Kennedy-McCain bill in 2006, passed with 62 votes in a Republican Senate. There's a history of bipartisan cooperation on this bill. And I think that part of what makes us optimistic, and the panelists you're going to hear from today, optimistic about the prospects of passage, is that I think that there's been a lot of confusion among politicians and, frankly, the media about what's in the bill, about the nature of the problem, and the history of the legislative pieces of this over the last few years. And so what we're going to address today is starting with this idea that there is public support for this. How do we get there in Congress? I mean, what we've seen with both climate change and health care is that getting to the end game here isn't easy in this environment, and that's what we're going to be spending our time talking about today. So the two people, let me introduce our two panelists. First, we're going to hear from Tamar Jacoby. She's the president and CEO of Immigration Works USA, a national federation of employers working to advance better immigration law. She's a nationally known journalist and author. She's a leading center-right advocate for immigration reform. Her articles have appeared in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, the Weekly Standard, and Foreign Affairs. And I particularly want to commend the Foreign Affairs piece. I thought 2 years ago, I guess it was something we sent out a lot, and I thought was really a landmark piece in this debate. Among other publications, she's a regular guest on national television and radio. She's the author of Someone Else's House, America's Unfinished Struggle for Integration, and editor of Reinventing the Melting Pot, The New Immigrants and What It Means to Be American. There are many other things I could say about Tamar, but we're very glad that she's with us today, and she'll be joining us in just a moment. Second is we have Ali Noorani, who's the executive director of the National Immigration Forum, which has been the backbone, the workhorse, trying to get this comprehensive immigration reform passed the last few years. He was chosen in 2008, March of 2008, to become the new executive director. The forum, which is based in Washington, D.C., is one of the nation's premier pro-immigration advocacy and policy organizations, and has been at the center of every major legislative and policy debate related to immigration over the past 25 years. I'll just say one other thing, which is that prior to joining the forum, Ali was executive director of the Massachusetts Immigrant and Refugee Advocacy Coalition, an organization he joined in November 2003. Under his leadership, they grew and did lots of good things during his time there. And I could go on and on about Ali, but I want to say that he is a wonderful guy. He's been a great leader, a great